What does it feel like to wake up every morning already behind with a line of people waiting to dump their problems on you? That was Chris Husick's reality. CEO of a growing fencing company stuck as the bottleneck for everything, feeling like a failure. I'm Nils, and I guide CEOs and their leadership teams in aligning their vision, strategy, and execution so they can scale with clarity, not burnout. Now, Chris went from chaos to focused execution in just 2 days. And here's exactly how it happened. Chris, before we started working together, what was life like for you inside of Husick Brothers Fencing?
I was stuck in this position of being a visionary and having great ideas, but never having the time and resources to be able to implement anything. And what little bit I could implement, failed to see much success or traction with it.
How did that make you feel on a day-to-day basis?
To be blunt, just like a failure, imposter syndrome that I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. There's other people that run businesses successfully. They must have something that I don't.
How did those feelings affect you personally?
The stress weighed on me day and night. The times when I felt free from stress were very short lived and sometimes very quickly interrupted.
Can you share a little bit about what a typical day looked like back then?
It felt like it never ended. I would wake up a lot of mornings early and just felt like there was nothing I could do to get enough done. I could start working right then, trying to get ahead of some of the fires. And sometimes it felt like I had a little success when I could get some stuff done early in the morning and the day might seem to run a little bit smoother. But there were other times all I wanted to do was hit snooze on the alarm clock until I absolutely had to get up and get ready and start doing something.
During those days, where were you spending most of your energy?
Trying to deal with the day-to-day chaos and fires, but some of that was just me personally thinking about the things that I needed to try to accomplish, what I thought might help me out of those situations. And then the other half of it, or maybe a lot more than half, was often everybody else in the company coming to me with their problems. Here I was thinking that it was my job to solve everybody else's problems, which meant I had no time to solve my own or the bigger problems of the company.
How was the team functioning at this point?
Poorly. For the most part, I've been the bottleneck of the company in a lot of ways. Everything rolled up to me. Time is the one constraint I can't change. At some points of the business, I had literally a line of people waiting to talk to me about their problems. Meanwhile, I had 100 of my own sitting on my desk.
What made you realize that it was time to get some help?
I had been in business up to the point that we met roughly 3.5 years. Started off fairly smooth when I was pretty much a one-man show. But as we added more people to the mix, it meant more and more problems. I had worked really hard for 3 years to try to solve those problems. Everything I knew to do, everything I could study and try to learn and see if I could implement in the business. At the end of the day, while there were some small successes along the way, it was never enough to break out of the cycle of feeling like I was just essentially failing at being an entrepreneur.
Was there a particular moment when it became clear when you're like, this is it? Like, I hit the wall. I need help.
It's hard to identify one because there's been a lot along the way, but something that really triggered that with me as we were starting to connect was just some other things in life, dealing with some relationship counseling, which was only needed because it was a byproduct of how the business was running and how it was affecting me. But started to see some success with that and saying, well, if I work with a counselor about relationships and that can make a significant improvement, maybe there's other areas in my life where this is really something that I need to look into. We're starting to look in the world for who are the people that know more than I do and can have that third party perspective that are going to be able to point me in the right direction and show me what I need to do to be successful.
What would the cost have been if you didn't change and everything stayed exactly the same?
I could only go on for so long doing things the way I had done them based on how it affected me emotionally, mentally, physically. I knew that I could only roll the dice so many times, so many days that I could get up and try my best, not knowing if it was really the right thing to do, that eventually it just wasn't going to work out.
What made you decide to work with me and take part in the Pinnacle process?
I really felt like you had a genuine interest in seeing me succeed, seeing the company succeed, and seeing me not continue to live my life in the broken state that it was at the time. That was the main thing, was feeling like you really cared about where things were going to lead, that I wasn't just a sale to make, which I think with some of the things that I've dealt with in business in the past with different types of coaches or contracts or whatever, that maybe those things were beneficial or could be beneficial, but that at the end of the day, it was a business deal for a lot of people. Really feeling like you were genuine in that and wanted to see what could be on the other side of this for me is what really instilled in me that I wanted to work with you personally.
Let's talk about base camp. And that was the start of our engagement. We spent 2 days together with you and your leadership team in a room. What stood out to you most about those 2 days?
By far, the thing that stood out most to me was we actually got a lot of meaningful work done in those 2 days. I fully anticipated that it was going to be more of like a show and tell. Here's the plan. Here's how it's going to work. By lunch on the first day, we had accomplished much. That tone just carried through for the rest of the 2 days. And just coming out of that feeling like we did so much to point the business in the right direction, but actually to begin moving it in the right direction.
How did your team respond? And was there anything unexpected that emerged during the 2 days, that initial piece and bringing them together, that was a surprise to you?
Well, my brother and business partner, he's a little more skeptical when it comes to this stuff. He's more reserved about, expenses and things like that. We balance each other in a healthy way in that aspect. He came into it not really knowing what we were getting into, just more trusting that he was something I thought was going to be beneficial for us. Over the course of those first 2 days together, he really saw that there was so much potential and so much that we were going to accomplish. Then having Alexis in there with us, I think it really gave her a lot of hope that we were going to move the company in the right direction, and that the challenges which rolled up to her or down to her in a lot of cases that she had to deal with on a daily basis, those things were going to start to improve, and she would see the benefit from working with you and with Pinnacle.
Did you feel like we got to the root of the core issues that you were facing during that initial 2 days when we were looking at big picture, getting everybody aligned, mapping out the future, where we were going? Did that help to address all the challenges that you guys were facing?
Absolutely. Towards the beginning of that, when we started listing off, as you call them, the brutal facts, I thought, okay, we're going to put all this stuff down. And then over the next year, we're going to start to tackle these problems. I really put those out of my mind for the rest of the 2 days until we came to the conclusion of that. And we started looking back at that list of brutal facts and acknowledging that those things might have not been resolved yet, but we actually had a game plan and we had set things in motion to address every single one of them. That was so eye-opening to me that we were moving forward in the right direction.
Isn't it amazing when you get all that out and then we go through the right series of steps and all the exercises we did to build the alignment, to build the vision, to build the strategy and begin the execution. And then all of a sudden you can look back and say, yeah, all those issues and concerns and the things that are holding us back, they're not going to hold us back anymore because we did all the right work. After base camp, within the first couple of weeks, we talked several times and you had made some significant changes, both internally and mentally. Can you share a little bit about what that transformation was like post those initial 2 days?
Yeah, it really hinges on the direction that we set. Prior to our 2-day base camp, every day was filled with fires, the day-to-day things that popped up unexpectedly that would steal 95% or more of my attention, my time, my energy. It was a huge shift initially that those things are going to happen. And regardless of what I do, they're going to come up. But then I could shift a significant amount of my time and energy towards the long-term goals that we set. Having that pinnacle out in front of us and thinking much farther forward on the timeline just allowed us to be so much more intentional with our time and energy and what we were going to accomplish each day. That impact was huge, and it allowed us to act so much more quickly. Things that we had let linger for 2-3 years without being addressed, knowing in the back of our minds that at some point they needed to be addressed, we somehow managed to address them within 2 weeks. It is just lightning speed compared to what we had done prior to that.
What was fundamentally different about those couple days as opposed to the last couple years?
It was clarity for us to intentionally have the conversations around what those issues were, what was going to be successful, what was not going to be successful. Once we had that established, there was no reason to wait to act on certain things. Having that North Star that we were headed towards and knowing that there were some things that we brought with us to this point that we couldn't carry with us the rest of the way. It was blatantly obvious and I couldn't continue to do it and punish myself or anybody else on the team still doing things like we had before.
We've been through a couple months now where you've been planning, you've been executing, you've been making changes. How have things changed for you personally?
Well, I'd love to sit here and tell you that it's been all sunshine and roses. There haven't been any more challenges, but the truth is there's been some bigger challenges. There's been things that have weighed on me heavier now than they did ever before because I see the impact or the potential that's associated with those moves that I need to make. Having the direction generates a lot of responsibility and accountability. Now I know where I need to go, so there's no excuse not to. In a sense, it's been very challenging and difficult because I have those responsibilities very clearly now. But it's been so freeing to let the distractions and the fires and all those other things kind of fall to the side and know that I can be 100% laser focused on what the real goals are and work on attaining those. What little fires pop up and burn out along the way are going to have relatively insignificant impact if I just keep my focus where it needs to be.
What's different now about the way that you lead and how you think about your role?
I think leading the rest of the team, but empowering them to have a more pivotal role can only come after we've set the tone and set the direction very clearly. That's been huge for me to convey to the team where we're going and what that looks like for us so that they're empowered to make the changes or decisions that they need to make to keep us moving in that direction. Means that a lot less of it has to roll up to me at this point. I didn't expect to see a significant change throughout the company, but with the underlying tone changing at the top, it trickled down so quickly before I knew it, before I had really told anybody else what we were doing or why. I was starting to see a change in how the rest of the company operated.
If you hadn't gone through this process, where would you and the company be today?
It's a question I don't know if I want to answer. We pushed ourselves to the limit and beyond in trying to do this without the direction and the guidance. And I think in a lot of sense, we're lucky we made it far enough to even have a conversation with you. Assuming that everything hadn't completely unraveled by now, I think we would be in a position of more chaos, more stress, continuing directionless, and it's not a fun place to be. I know that just from the history, as much as things might have been painful a year ago, 2 years ago, they've gotten significantly worse and more challenging over time as we've tried to operate without the direction. I have no reason to expect that all of a sudden things would have improved magically if we hadn't really made a meaningful change.
There's a lot of CEOs out there, Chris, who probably feel similar to the way that you used to. They're the glue holding everything together. They're overstressed, overburdened, overworked, dealing with constant fires all day, every day. What would you say to someone who was in that spot where you were just a few months ago?
Get help. You have to be a little bit crazy to be an entrepreneur. You got to be a risk taker. With that comes the courage to push yourself way beyond where you ever should by yourself. I wish I knew 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what I know now about how meaningful that help and that guidance can be. It's never too early. If I were to go back to before I started the business and just have all the knowledge that I have right now, having a guide would be absolutely one of the first things I did.
What would you say to a CEO who's on the fence about going through this kind of exercise, thinking, my leadership team, we're good, we're smart, we know our business. An outside person, they're not going to know our business. What would you say to them?
You don't know what you don't know. I wonder how much of that is still to be revealed to me that I don't know yet. But even in the experience I've had so far, it's made such meaningful change that I may have assumed it was possible, but I had no idea what it would look like or how it would work. As an entrepreneur, somebody who is really working hard to make your life better, your family's life better, you owe it to yourself to actually do that. I pushed myself down this road of setting goals and wanting to be successful in all this. Meanwhile, if my own mental health, emotional health, and relationships around me outside of the workplace are falling apart, what's the point? There's not an entrepreneur out there who doesn't owe it to themselves to have the guidance and make sure that they can do this and somehow reach a successful point in their life, but to actually do it in a healthy way is so meaningful. And that's something I would never want to trade for anything.
If you go back to the point before you asked for help, both on the personal side and us working together, why do you think it was so hard to get to that point?
I wondered for a long time if we were past the point of being able to save or salvage anything. I wish I had done it sooner. I think that part of it, it's the drive. I was always driven, very competitive, whether it was in sports growing up or in work. And I wanted to be the best. I wanted to make sure if there was a leaderboard, I wanted to be at the top of it to prove it to myself more than anything else. At the end of the day, I wanted to be an entrepreneur who was going to be a rock star entrepreneur and have a story to tell about what I accomplished or who I helped or how big of a company I built, things like that. There's a little bit of pride or ego that comes with that. But to do that long enough and realize either I'm broken or the system I'm using is broken, and finally acknowledge that, it was a priceless decision to make.
You and I talked early on that I had never run a fence company. I was never going to run a fence company. You are the expert in the fence company, but I brought the Pinnacle system and this approach. Tell me a little bit about your thought process on working with someone who had no experience running your exact type of company. And what was the comfort level that you got to where you said, one, Nils, I trust you, and two, this system makes a lot of sense?
There are very successful fence companies out there that have significant online YouTube presence and successful business owners. And a lot of the stuff that is out there that they might offer as far as teaching or guidance, it worked really well for them. But I didn't necessarily want my business to be a carbon copy of their business. While I think their formula may work, it wasn't necessarily right for me. Having somebody that built one successful fence company seemed a lot less meaningful in that light than somebody who had counseled lots of businesses to become more successful and to operate in a better way.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your experience that we haven't touched on so far?
I don't know that I could say enough to really convey the change that this has brought in me personally. I shared with you that a lot of points along that road before we met were pretty dark and just felt alone. And that's something that I wouldn't wish on anybody. Coming to where I am now and the amount of change I've seen, not just in the business, but in the way that I think and I act, the way I treat myself and value my own time and my own mental health is so much different. That's something that I've seen the impact so quickly. It's just been huge. It's changed my relationships. It's changed my personal life. It's changed my sleep patterns. Everything is gradually getting better, but how much of an impact that's made and how quickly just is phenomenal. And it's something that there's no way really to express that to anybody that hasn't been to as dark of a place as I've been and then seen the change be implemented.
No, that's incredible. I thank you for being open and honest and vulnerable. I appreciate that so much. You're an inspiration. You went through the dark stuff and you asked for help and you're climbing out and you have a completely different way to approach everything and think about everything and your business in a completely different direction as a result of getting clarity for you and your leadership team, aligning everybody around the same vision, the strategy, and now we're executing. And it's just going to be an incredible next several years. I can't wait to see all the wonderful things that you and the team do. Thank you so much for letting me be your guide and for spending time sharing your story with us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nils.
Chris's transformation started with one simple realization. He was the bottleneck in his own business. Everything ran through him, which meant nothing could grow beyond him. If that sounds familiar, I've created a quick assessment to help you figure out where you stand. It's called Can Your Business Scale Without You? It involves 10 questions and takes less than 3 minutes to complete. You'll get immediate insights into what's holding your business back and whether you're ready for the kind of breakthrough that Chris experienced. Click the link in the description below to take the assessment now, because the first step to scaling with clarity is knowing exactly where you stand today.